President Trump has once again falsely accused the FBI of spying on him, but it turns out there was one person who really did secretly tape Trump, his own lawyer. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. The president is facing an intense political backlash over his press conference last week with Vladimir Putin. His administration still has thousands of migrant children jailed and separated from their parents, and his personal fixer, Michael Cohen, might be cooperating with federal investigators. So naturally, Trump has decided the appropriate response is to threaten a war with Iran.
President Trump is once again threatening the annihilation of a country. Very late last night, Trump tweeted out in all capitals, quote, "To Iranian President Rouhani, never ever threaten the United States again, or you will suffer consequences, the likes of which few throughout history have ever suffered before. We are no longer a country that will stand for your demented words of violence and death. Be cautious." Wow.
You can take the crazy old man out of Queens, but you can't make him stop yelling at foreigners. Also, you don't get to say "be cautious" when you're tweeting in all caps. That's like a British person screaming at the top of their lungs, "Keep calm and carry on! We're all gonna die!" Trump's threat of war against Iran was just the latest in a series of unhinged comments over the weekend. Since the start of his presidency, Trump has also nursed the paranoid fantasy that the FBI and the Democrats were spying on him. Over the weekend, he tweeted looking more and more like the Trump campaign for president was illegally being spied upon, surveillance, for the political gain of crooked Hillary Clinton and the DNC. I think my favorite part of that one is surveillance in parentheses. Like, in case you didn't know what spied upon means, here's a longer word for it. Surveillance must have been on his word of the year calendar. Surveillance, oh, spied upon. See you next January, words. Trump's latest outburst came after the Justice Department released a redacted version of the application they filed to surveil a Trump campaign advisor named Carter Page. There he is. God bless him. That's how your dog looks at you when he's torn a pillow apart and you haven't started yelling at him yet. I took care of that pillow for you. I did good, right? The FBI believed that Page has been collaborating and conspiring with the Russian government. On Sunday, Page went on TV to defend himself, but would not answer the simple question of whether he had relationships with Russian officials.
You have relationships with Russian government officials, right?
Well, let's see what they're referring to specifically.
But Carter, you didn't answer. I mean, you have relationships with Russian government officials, true? Yes.
Well, let's see what they're talking about. You know, I'm
just asking you a straight question. Do you have relationships with Russian government officials? I can tell you, I don't.
Oh, you don't, Jake Tapper? You think Wolf Blitzer is his real name? Beard, glasses? That's obviously Vladimir Putin in a disguise. Page, Smiling Carter Page was then asked if he had ever served as an informal advisor to the Kremlin, a charge he denied despite some powerful evidence.
Did you ever advise the Kremlin or work with the Kremlin on anything?
Look, Jake, no.
But you did advise the Kremlin. I mean, I just want to make it clear. You did advise the Kremlin back in 2013 or 2012, somewhere in there.
Jake, it's really spin. I mean, I sat in on some meetings, but you know, to call me an advisor, I think is way over the top.
Except in the 2013 letter you wrote, it says, quote, "Over the past half year, I have had the privilege to serve as an informal advisor to the staff of the Kremlin in preparation for the presidency of the G20 summit next month, where energy issues will be a prominent point on the agenda." That's August 2013. That's yourself calling yourself an informal advisor to the Kremlin.
You know, informal, having some conversations with people.
I have never seen anyone so happy about a losing hand. I have a full house, Carter. Well, I have a Metro card and a CVS receipt. But Trump's obsession with being secretly taped is not new. It's something he's been fixated on throughout his presidency, like when he falsely accused President Obama of having his wires tapped, or when he tweeted James Comey, "Better hope that there are no tapes of our conversations." It's almost like he got secretly taped at some point, and waiting for that tape to come out is slowly driving him insane. And he tries not to think about that tape, but for whatever reason, every time he pees, he can't get it out of his mind. And even Trump's explanations for his bizarre comments about secret tapes are themselves incriminating. Like when he was asked about his Comey tweet and rambled like he was under police interrogation.
Why did you want him to believe that you possibly did that?
Well, I didn't tape him. You never know what's happening when you see that the Obama administration, and perhaps longer than that, was doing all of this unmasking and surveillance, and you read all about it, and I've been reading about it for the last couple of months about the seriousness of and horrible situation with surveillance all over the place. So you never know what's out there, but I didn't tape, and I don't have any tape, and I didn't tape.
He's like the bus from the movie Speed. He can't stop talking or he'll explode. Trump's paranoia about being secretly taped doesn't just cause him to accuse others of spying on him. He has also repeatedly insisted, without any prompting, that there are no secret recordings proving that his team colluded with Russia. Like when he tweeted, out of nowhere, they have 0 tapes of T people colluding. Or when the P-tape allegations first surfaced in 2017. Trump insisted he was always careful when he traveled abroad because he was always afraid he was being recorded.
I'm surrounded by bodyguards. I'm surrounded by people. And I always tell them, anywhere, but I always tell them, if I'm leaving this country, be very careful. Because in your hotel rooms, and no matter where you go, you're going to probably have cameras. I'm not referring just to Russia, but I would certainly put them in that category. But in those rooms, you have cameras in the strangest places. Cameras that are so small with modern technology, you can't see them and you won't know. You better be careful, or you'll be watching yourself on nightly television.
Okay, so hold on. Just a tip. If someone asks you, did you pee on a bed with hookers? The right answer is no, that's disgusting, I'm married. Not, no, there are cameras everywhere. So Trump is obsessed with being secretly taped, but it turns out it wasn't Russia or the FBI he should have been worried about. It was his own lawyer.
The New York Times is just reporting that Michael Cohen secretly recorded a conversation that he had with Donald Trump just 2 months before the presidential election, and that the 2 men in this phone conversation discussed payments to a former Playboy model who said that she had an affair with Donald Trump.
So Trump has spent his entire presidency obsessed with being secretly recorded, and it turns out the only one who secretly recorded him was his own lawyer. Everyone from his past is coming back to haunt him. If he ever goes on trial, it's going to look like the Seinfeld finale. But instead of the soup Nazi, there'll be actual Nazis. So now there's a secret recording that directly implicates Trump in a scheme to pay hush money to silence a Playboy model, and possibly even implicates him in campaign finance violations and bank fraud. And it was made by his own lawyer. Now, you might feel bad for Donald Trump that his lawyer secretly taped him, but that's what you get when you hire a terrible lawyer. Remember, this is all hush-hush, Michael. Oh, I remember, because when you said it was hush-hush, I taped it, and then I played it back to make sure I heard you right. And then I put that tape in a box that said, hey, FBI, these tapes are none of your beeswax. But this explains why Trump is so scared of being secretly recorded. Whenever there is a transcript or recording of a secret meeting or phone call he or his team had, we find out they did something incriminating. It also explains why the people closest to Trump have repeatedly tried to set up secret back channels to Russia, or why he wanted to meet privately with Putin without aides, or why he wouldn't even tell his own intelligence heads about his plan to invite Putin to the White House, which resulted in this amazing clip last week of Dan Coats, the director of national intelligence, finding out about the invitation on stage from Andrea Mitchell.
We have some breaking news. The White House has announced on Twitter that Vladimir Putin is coming to the White House in the fall.
Say that again?
Vladimir Putin coming
Did I
to
hear
the...
you? Did I hear you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's going to be special.
That's the director of national intelligence, which makes sense because under Trump, our national intelligence has basically devolved to, say what? Trump has spent his entire presidency doing everything possible to evade both public oversight of his actions and his own intelligence agencies, and now it turns out it was his own lawyer who secretly recorded him. And I can't wait for that tape to be played in court because
That's going to be special.
this has been A Closer Look.